On behalf of the University of North Carolina at Asheville, I would like to present to you the 6th Chancellor of the University of North Carolina and my colleague and boss, Dr. Ann Ponder.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Jim, can you now hear in the back? Good, thank you. Thank you. Welcome to the University of North Carolina at Asheville. We are proud and honored to be hosting the 2007 State of Black Asheville Forum today. It looks like the program unfolds with several, but not all, of the most important topics before us as a community. I want to thank the organizers, moderators, and speakers. And I want you to know that some of the moderators and speakers have been arranged and invited by our very own students in Dwight Mullen's class. One of the privileges of being a chancellor is that from time to time I have the honor and opportunity to recognize a significant person in the history of UNC Asheville. Today we have the introductory opportunity and the honor to do that. Sitting before you among the other speakers is Etta Whitner Patterson. Etta was a student at Stevens Lee High School here in Asheville and a member of ASCORE, the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality, a group that we honored and celebrated and gathered a year ago at UNC Asheville. ASCORE was led in its second year by Etta, and she became its president after the first president, James Ferguson, graduated. In 1961, when most of us were younger, in 1961, Asheville Biltmore College entered a new phase in its history by opening classes on its new campus here on what is now UNC Asheville. Another important milestone happened that very year when Etta Whitner became the first African American student at Asheville Biltmore College. Because she was a good student, well qualified for college entrance, and clearly already a recognized leader, members of the Asheville Citizens Committee approached Etta's mother to see if Etta could be encouraged to enroll as the first black student at Asheville Biltmore College. It was a good opportunity for Etta, so she applied, was accepted, and started school in the fall of 1961. She speaks warmly of Asheville Biltmore College and her experience as a college student, and I want to thank her for two things. One is that she is such an important pioneer because she responded to a longing that our college had for inclusion that we were not smart enough to articulate prior to that time. And all of us, white and black, all of us, now have the opportunity to belong to and with each other in this college and university in a way that would not have happened if Etta Whitner had not stepped forward in the way that she did. Today we want to honor this pioneer, this civil rights leader who took a risk when asked. She, like so many other members of ASCORE, shows us that students are our leaders for the future and sometimes just need to be asked to be the first, to try a different way, to make a change in our world. Etta Whitner Patterson, thank you for leading the way for thousands who have and will follow in your footsteps. We are pleased to have you with us today, and I have the honor of presenting you with a photograph that was taken Last year, when we celebrated A-Score on our campus, Etta, would you please come forward? This is a photograph of all of the members of A-Score. Etta is the third from the left, and I would like to present this framed photo to you.
Thank you. First of all, Butch, who you know, you better come and pinch me. Out there, you better come and pinch me, and Sophie, because I don't believe this is happening. Honestly, but it is such a delight, Dr. Ponder, and this young lady, I said, see, I can call her young lady because I've earned that right. When I heard that she had been elected mayor, I said, right on, you know. I was so excited, but words cannot express, and for those who have known me for a long time, know that I've never had a loss of words, but I am today. I am grateful. I am grateful to have been chosen to come here. I had no idea that it would be significant at all. It was just something that needed to be done. And I happened to be the one chosen to do it. My experience at Asheville Biltmore College was extremely positive. I just had a good time here and was fortunate enough to see one of my classmates that I hadn't seen in 46 years yesterday and learned that she works here. So listen, a lot of the students ask me if I see any progress here. Oh, from where I came from, there's been a lot of progress. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much for honoring me. I'm still Etta, and grown a little bit, much wiser, more beautiful. And excited about this opportunity. Thank you so very much. And Asheville, keep up the good work. You're all right with me.
At the end of today, we will, of course, deliver this to Etta personally. But during the day, in the breaks between, we will put this photograph on an easel. So you can come up and see what Etta looked like when just last year, and to figure yourselves. Many of you who are A-Score members are also here today, and I would like for you to have the opportunity to see that. And for those of us who only came to know these pioneers in this era of our lives, come see this part of history in photograph and in person. Welcome to UNC Asheville.
Thank you, Chancellor Ponder. Our next speaker is someone who is known to all of us as our mayor and our friend. Ms. Terry Bellamy is one of 3 African-American mayors running a city with more than 50,000 people and less than a 20% African-American population. She's a member of a generation that followed Ella Baker, Margaret Rose Murray, and Rosemary Lowry Townsend. On December 6, 2005, Terry Bellamy was sworn in as the first African-American and the youngest mayor of her hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah. Asheville elected the 33-year-old who was in the midst of her second term as city councilwoman. While African Americans make up only 17% of the population of the city, and about 57% of the population voted for Terry Bellamy. I present to you now to introduce all of the elected officials and politicians in our audience and to say a word of welcome, our mayor and our friend, Terry Bellamy.
Thank you. Thank you. You're so kind to do that. I sincerely appreciate that. You know, when you're introduced by someone that you admire, you stand in awe. Dr. Locke is not only a personal friend, he's a confidant. He's one of those people that I call, that I have a chorus of encouragers, people who support Terry, not the mayor. And Don is in my chorus. He sings in my chorus, and I appreciate him. And so please help me celebrate someone that I love. To Ms. Patterson, I say congratulations, and I do stand on your shoulders. I hope I'm not too heavy, but I sincerely appreciate you opening the door and making a way for others who look like us to be able to get a great education at the University of North Carolina at Asheville today. It's my honor to recognize the people that I serve with on Asheville City Council. I do want to recognize the Vice Mayor first. I think she's here. I heard her laugh. Vice Mayor Holly Jones. And on the front row, we have Councilwoman Cape over here. Councilman Brian Freeborn. Councilman Brownie Newman. Councilman Carl Mumpower is in the room as well. And seated to his right, or my right, is Councilman Jan Davis. So technically we have a quorum, so any business that we need to take care of, the media has been alerted that we would be here, so technically we have no excuses why we couldn't pass a couple of ordinances in the city. But I also want to recognize our state legislators who are in the room, and a good friend of the city of Asheville is Susan Fisher, who's here as well. Representative Bruce Goforth is also here this morning. I don't want to leave any legislator out, any others in the room. I do not want to leave anyone out. I want to make sure I recognize everyone. Okay. We have some judges in the room. I need to recognize the newest judge to the bench, and that's a friend of mine, Calvin Hill. Judge Hill is here as well. A judge who was appointed by our governor and has run for election and did a fine job. Judge Barrett is here as well. And we have members of our Buncombe County Commission, and Carol Peterson, who is the vice chair of the County Commission, is here. Would you please recognize Carol Peterson? And representing Heath Schuler's office, our congressman, is Bruce Peterson, if we could recognize him as well. Anyone else? I don't want to leave any other elected official out because I know how hard it is to run to keep your seat, so I want to make sure you get the honor which is due you. I got a quick request. If everyone could please stand. This is a trick. I'm going to go ahead and announce this. Take one step forward. Take 2 steps forward. Look where you are. Some of you have progressed quite handsomely from where you stood up your place. And others of you didn't move. Take a seat. Take a seat. Back in your seat. Today is about moving forward. Understanding that not all of us are going to move forward at the same rate, but the goal is that we all move forward. Now, there were some people who chose not to stand, and that's okay, because in the work that needs to be done for our community, there were some people who will not stand. There were some people who may have put in their time and say, I'm here to support, and that's good. But some of us took bigger steps because we were really excited about the opportunity to move forward. And so today I want us to focus on, we know where we are now, how do we move forward? Before I go any further, I need to recognize a good friend, and that's Theodis Beck, who's Secretary of Corrections for the state of North Carolina. It's good to see you. You know, as mayor, when I walked into this room today, I told Dr. Locke, I said, what does this say about our community when you look across the room and see what you see? Today, I am proud to be Asheville's mayor. I'm extremely proud. You know, we could have come here and it just could have been a room of African Americans. I could have come here and there could have been just a room full of non-African Americans. But today I come here and I see a mixed room of people waiting for the speakers to get up here to talk about where we are, but more importantly, to talk about where we're going to go. In order for Asheville to truly be the best city in the Southeast, we have got to move past where we have been. We have to acknowledge and say we've had some failures. We've had some setbacks. We've had some disappointments in different areas. But that's what we used to do. Each day is a new day. God gives us grace each morning. Each morning he says, my mercies are new each morning. And so I'm asking us to say good morning. Because I'm reminded of a poem by Maya Angelou, and it was The Pulse of a New Morning, and she says in her poem she talks about the mastodons and where people stood and how people worked together, but at the end she says simply, very simply, good morning. Because good morning means yesterday's gone. We can't change that, but we can change our tomorrow. So each of you here today, I ask that you embrace the possibilities. I ask that you look at what you would like to see for your community, because it's yours, whether it's in Asheville, Buncombe County, whether it's in Leicester or Fairview, we're all in it together. My last quote, Gandhi said this, and I'll leave you with this today. Become the change that you want to see. Thank you.
One of the things that we're most proud of about our new mayor is that she came to us and asked if we could build a partnership in which the city and the University of North Carolina at Asheville could celebrate each other as visitors come to our city. And she has elected to give each visitor to the city an official gift, which is made at UNC Asheville in our art department. So you will see a number of art objects being distributed, and that is through a direct partnership between the city and the university, and I think that's very good of you. Thank you for doing that. Why this topic? Why a topic about the state of Black Asheville? UNC Asheville is a liberal arts institution. It is the state's only public liberal arts institution, and as such has an obligation to engage in discussions related to the political, social, and economic issues affecting the city and the state. We are committed at the University of North Carolina at Asheville to a focus on diversity. Our chancellor talks about diversity. My specific responsibility at the university is to promote diversity, and we believe that our entire community embraces the concept of diversity. Professor Dwight Mullen, in a co-listed course, which means that it's listed in both political science and in Africana Studies, Political Science 373, The State of Black Asheville, uses as its primary textbook Tavis Smiley's The Covenant. I asked one of the students just this morning, Deshauna Kemp, what do you think about this book? And this is what she said to me. It is up to date, it's concise, it's realistic, and it's somewhat inspiring. There is a ray of hope in this particular book. By the way, our chancellor has also read that book as a part of her education about how we are doing things. Secondly, why this topic at this time? This symposium comes at a time when African American political fortunes have never been brighter, and problems affecting the community have never been more profound. The primary theme of this event is self-empowerment, that African Americans must find solutions to problems instead of waiting for the government or for others to do it for us. Tavis Smiley, in the introduction to the covenant, states clearly, and I quote, "I have given up on trying to change they and them. I'm more concerned about we and us. How do we advance our agenda?" Problems persist. Most recently, information reported by the National Urban League's annual State of Black America report indicated that the median household income for African Americans is about 56% of that of whites in 2006. The scourge of HIV/AIDS continues to ravage the African American community at an alarming clip. Of about 1 million HIV sufferers in the United States, 47% are African American. And this according to the Centers for Disease Control statistics for 2005, and that's the most recent year available. African American males are incarcerated at a rate 6 times greater than white males, according to a review by the Sentencing Project of the 2005 Bureau of Justice Statistics. The African American prison population has exploded from 98,000 in 1954, the year of Brown versus the Board of Education, to more than 910,000 in 2005. Poor African American adults suffer more health problems than their white counterparts, according to a report by the Commonwealth Fund. 63% of African Americans who earned up to twice the federal poverty level reported that they had one of 4 chronic diseases: hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, or asthma, compared with 50% of low-income whites. And you know where I got this data? I got this data from the students in Dr. Mullen's class. And finally, why this topic at this time and in this place? UNC Asheville believes that as the state's only designated public liberal arts institution, that we have both an opportunity and an obligation to facilitate dialogue on issues relevant to our community. UNC Asheville is a part of the Asheville community. We further believe that your presence here today provides testament to your willingness to help us explore this topic at this time and in this place. I now provide you with an opportunity to hear from Dr. Dwight Mullen, the professor of political science, 373, to talk about his view of this particular event. I present to you Dr. Dwight Mullen, who I suspect is no stranger.
For my students, both past and present, I welcome you, y'all, really. And I didn't even have to make you come. But your assignments are due Monday. They are due. For the staff people, particularly Mona Moore, really, you all, if any of you know me, you know this is not my level of organizational skill that's evident today. This is completely on the shoulders of the staff and the students who participated with them. This is their opportunity to show you what they're worth. But I've asked them to also search you out. I mean, I was very plain to them and said to them that if they do not introduce themselves to you, I'm going to drag them to you. Because this is how, it's not networking for them. This is their education. Mm-hmm. They have to understand, you all, that this is not magic. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. It takes a whole lot of work. I mean, for example, let me just, I won't take long, but I have to give you the history of it. I just have to give it to you. I teach classes in African politics and African-American politics. In African-American politics, part of what you learn about is the Negro Convention movement. The Negro Convention movement was done in the 1800s. The 1800s were a time when people were trying to figure out how to stop slavery. Free blacks getting together, talking about how to stop slavery. There weren't any white folk there. They had to get themselves together because there were slave owners who were black. Not many. But so many were protecting their own freedoms by looking for the freedom of their community. Look, this grew out of the Niagara movement, 1909. You see the Niagara movement was when the NAACP found its roots. But let me tell you how those roots just happened to be. That was the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln being celebrated. The city of Springfield, Illinois, went up and killed hundreds of black people in celebration of Lincoln's birthday. And so the children of the abolitionists, white abolitionists, got together with good men of color in Niagara, New York, to say, how can we stop this? White and black folk together. And really, it's in that spirit that we're here, that we, as a conversation on the state of Black Asheville, we're having it across racial lines, of course across gender lines, but also across class lines. Now, you have to understand what that means, y'all. Students, you hear me on this. When you're talking in so many voices, we're tempted, it's easiest to personalize it. And so the conversations we're having today are difficult and can get personal. They're not meant to be. Just as in the 1800s, early 1900s, let's start this 21st century in Asheville with a conversation about our institutions. We're talking about democracy being expressed through education and through law enforcement and health care and housing. These are our institutions. And as we look at the data that you generated now, we're here to figure out where do we go from here. And there's a bit of irony with that. Where do we go from here is the last book of Dr. Martin Luther King. It's published in 1968. Listen to what it talked about. Once it identified the problem, once it rooted itself in its history, it identified an audience to write to. Listen to the topics he talked about as we go forward from the end of the era of segregation. Education, employment, human rights, and housing. Those were the 4 areas he identified. And here we are, what, 40 years still dealing, because it's not magic. We have to put the work in to make these things correct. That's on one hand. Second thing, point of confusion. As we talk about our institutions, y'all, as we talk about our institutions, let us be clear that institutions have outcomes. And those outcomes are the data that are going to be presented to you throughout the day. And the numbers can get confusing, so what the students have done, they were practicing pie charts and bar graphs, and they're going to be flashing, and it's going to be up, it's going to be up. So if you get a chance, look at it. By the end of the semester, the papers are going to be published. That's our goal for the semester, to get a publication out of it. Because part of the democracy and part of the holding the institutions accountable is the idea that data, that the information, that the outcomes, that's public property. You do not have a right to hold it. Asheville Police Department, Buncombe County Sheriffs. The health department, housing, education. You don't have a right to hold what you are doing away from the public which you're serving. And so we're here to talk about that. It's embarrassing, but it's not personal. We're here to make it better because it takes all of us to work. What I can't believe, it started out as 50 people. 1 minute. It started out as 50 people, because I thought we were going to get our friends together, because I knew people who had just gotten elected. And we were going to invite them to campus for lunch. And I was going to tell the media, so people could, be there. It was going to be legal. And I was going to put them in a room, and I was going to put my students around them to listen to them talk, because they didn't have a chance to talk across office lines without formalities being in the way. The housing people, the police people, when do you get a chance to cross-pollinate? And so I said, let's do it here at UNCA. Let's just host this. And the students said, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Next thing I knew, do you know that over 300 people have RSVP'd for this day? The 300 people have RSVP'd. Yeah. So as we talk about, as we go through the day, remember, we have a couple of conversations. We have the ones that are occurring at the roundtables, the ones that will occur between the roundtables and the audience, but most importantly, the conversations that will occur in the hallways and over lunch. Talk about these things. Don't worry about the language just yet. If it offends, if I'm too blunt, that's okay. This is a university. We're here to exchange your ideas. The words will find a way. They will find a way. And to my friends, y'all, God, this must be what the funeral's gonna look like, huh?
We hope you're not ready to go too soon. There's still work left to be done. Let me just also acknowledge that we have a lot of people in our audience who are here. The chancellor, at one occasion, asked all the people who were on the campus for the first time to stand. I'm not going to do that today, but I do want to see how many people are here who are either educators or interested in education. Would you just stand so we can see who you are? The educators are people interested. Thank you. Well, interested in the context of today's events. We have I saw some clergy coming in. Where are the clergy in our midst? Would you stand and let us recognize you? Thank you for coming. And in the context of today, all of us are interested in law enforcement, but those of you who are either law enforcement personnel or specifically interested in law enforcement, thank you for coming. Healthcare, those of you specifically interested in healthcare or work in that industry, thank you. Housing, those of you who are interested in housing or work in that area, thank you. Business persons, those who are businesses or interested in that, thank you for being here. And in Asheville, we also have the category called Other. Those are community volunteers or individuals who don't quite fit. I see former Mayor Lenny Sidnick waving her hand. That's her category. Those of you who are in that category, just stand up and let's see who you are. Community volunteers, thank you. And if I left out anyone, please forgive me. It was not intentional. You should also know that today, for the University of North Carolina at Asheville, is our homecoming. And you will see a lot of activity on our campus related to homecoming. But we are particularly pleased about the fact that we will have a basketball game this afternoon with Radford University. The Radford University coach is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Asheville and one of our former players. And I'd like for you to welcome him to a defeat this afternoon, Byron Samuels. Where are you, Byron? Please stand. And thank you for joining us as we continue our discussions
on the state of Black Asheville. Thank you. We'll see you all back together at lunch in the lower level, and we hope to have a good day. Thank you. This has indeed been an exciting experience for me. I had the opportunity of working directly with the students who were responsible for the education information in preparing for the state of Black Asheville. So I've been fortunate. As someone who works in the Chancellor's office, I don't always get to work directly with students who are learning. They were enthusiastic. They were prompt, they were thorough, they have done a darn good job, and I think the country, the state, and the city are going to be in good hands as long as we have students of this caliber who are going to go out into the world and take care of it for us. Some of you are aware that most recently there was an event in Raleigh called HK on J. How many of you know what that was, heard about that? HK on J. I thought that was really clever. It's historic thousands on Jones Street. Jones Street is of course, where the legislature is located. And they went to Raleigh last Saturday, buses from all over the state of North Carolina. I understand there were some 5,000 people in attendance. They presented 14 points to the legislature. I'm only going to be concerned about the first point because it is relevant to our presence here today. Point number one stated that all children need high-quality, well-funded, diverse schools. That is what we are about as we evaluate the state of education, the state of Black education in Asheville. I want to share with you just a few of the points out of the roughly 40-page document that these students gathered. It was amazing to me. I actually took that home last Monday night, and I was enthused, I was happy, and I was sad as I read the paper because some of the things, as Dr. Mullen said, ain't pretty. But that's what we're here to talk about. How can we improve the quality of education in our city so that all children will receive a high-quality, well-funded, diverse education? Some of the data from that student report include the following. While Level 3 proficiency on the end-of-course test, stated as adequate understanding of the material, shows a 35% gap between Black and white students. The gap between scores at level 4, which is excellence or superiority, is even higher. There are currently 2 African American students and 45 white students enrolled in advanced placement U.S. history at Asheville High School. This one really got me. 96.8% of all African American students at Asheville High School are ranked in the bottom 50% of their class. 96.8% of all African American students at Asheville High are ranked in the bottom 50% of their class. And you should be aware that those of us in higher education look at SAT scores, and of course there's some problems with SAT, and please come in and find a seat. This is wonderful. But we also look at something called class rank. Class rank often plays a more important role in decision making than does an SAT score. In terms of faculty in the Asheville City Schools, 88% of the faculty teaching in the schools are white, and close to 12% are African American. In terms of discipline, despite the fact that African American students make up only 37% of the Asheville City Schools population, African American students are almost 6 times more likely to be suspended from school than white students. Graduation rates and dropouts. In terms of graduation rates, a gap of 19 points exists between black and white males for Asheville High School. For black and white females, this gap is 42 points. And while disparities in the Asheville city schools resemble those in other districts and cities, this does not satisfy those of us who are concerned about what goes on in Asheville. And while achievement and enrollment are similar to other schools, this does not satisfy us that we are simply looking like the rest of the state. These students asked a number of folk to join us today to address issues of education in the Asheville schools. To my immediate left is my best friend, Gene Bell, who is director of the Asheville Housing Authority of the city of Asheville. He began his career with that organization as director of maintenance and construction in 1994 and was appointed director in 2005. Prior to joining the Housing Authority in the city of Asheville, he was director of technical services for the Charlotte Housing Authority in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was also a partner in B&T Remodeling, a family-owned company specializing in construction and remodeling. And prior to that, he worked at IBM between 1966 and 1985. He's a graduate of Xavier University, and we often talk about the little Harvard of the Midwest, Xavier, and not the Xavier in Louisiana. We have a good laugh about that occasionally. He serves on the board of directors of the United Way, the YMI Cultural Center, the Drug Commission, the Weed and Seed Program, the Asheville Committee for Economic Development, and in this context today, he's a member of the Asheville City School Board. Next to him is my friend and one of my bosses, because he serves on the Board of Trustees of the University of North Carolina at Asheville, but also a very good friend, Al Whitesides. Al is currently Vice President at Mountain First Bank and Trust. He's a graduate of Stevens Lee High School in Asheville and is a member of that A-score group that for those of you who don't remember that. He is vice chair of the Board of Trustees at the University of North Carolina. He's a member of the Asheville City School Boards, the Mission Hospital Foundation Board, the WCQS Board of Directors, the Salvation Army Advisory Board, and he's a member of the Community Board of Directors at Givens Estate. And I think the most important thing about Al is that he selected an educator as his life partner, and that's Shirley Whitesides, who is a retired educator in the Asheville City Schools. He also has 2 daughters and 3 grandsons. I would also say that Gene Bell has 2 children, a son and a daughter, and 1 grandchild, since we're doing the cheering thing. And next to him is my colleague.
And your friend? I'm not your friend.
I'm gonna.
I'm really gonna be upset.
I'm
just making sure.
Just let me do this, darling. Just let me do it.
Don't want any stuff up here.
And a person in whose office I sit frequently, because when I need to engage in catharsis, Dolly Mullen is one of the best listeners I've ever encountered, and she's indeed my friend. And I go to her office and say, let me just tell you what's going on. Because sometimes it gets lonely in a position of director of diversity in a university. I often say to Dolly, all the white folks think because I'm there that all the problems are solved, and all the black folks think because I'm there, I will solve all of their problems. And neither of those is quite true. Dr. Dolly Jenkins Mullen holds an undergraduate degree from Morgan State University and a master's and PhD from Atlanta University in political science. She is the vice chair of the Asheville City School Board and is chair of political science at UNC Asheville. And what Dwight didn't tell you, she's the chair of his department. Let there be no confusion about who runs that house. Okay, Joanne, thank you. Keep me in line, will you? And finally, to my extreme left is the superintendent of the Asheville City Schools. Mr. Logan served as a teacher, a coach, a principal, a state education department consultant, and central office administrator in at least 8 North Carolina school districts. He has more than 30 years of experience in North Carolina public education. He holds a BS degree in education from Western Carolina University, a Master of Arts in Education from East Carolina, and a specialist degree in educational administration from East Carolina University. He has been our superintendent since 2001. He serves on a number of local, regional, and state committees, mostly related to education. He is married and the father of 2 children who are in the Asheville City Schools. And I didn't tell you about your children, Dolly, but she has a lot of them. And if you ever go to her house, it really, they seem to attract all of the students at UNC Asheville, before they leave their program, get a special course at the Mullins house.
I would like it if you would recognize my students who've done that. Lots of them are here.
Who are the students who have been to the Mullins home? Just stand up and let us see who you are. There they are. Stand up. They're waving in the back. These are all Mullins children. What I'd like to do is start on the other end with the speakers and ask them to briefly make comments about the state of black education, either from their perspective or as a reaction to the document. All of them have read the document that the students prepared. And we'll begin with the superintendent of education, and we'll actually just move right down the row. What we'd like to do is give them each about 10 minutes to offer their comments. And at the conclusion of that, we will have conversation with the audience. And our ultimate goal is by noon to have 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 action plan items that we can say that we developed as a result of this activity. Superintendent Logan.
Good morning. Good morning. I would like to bring a little different perspective to the data this morning relative to that of the school system and what I call the superintendent's perspective. If you've not had an opportunity to read the report prepared by the students, please do so. There's a lot of information there, a lot of time and a lot of quality work has been put into that document. And in fact, the school system participated in helping the students prepare it. So do take an opportunity to look at it. Also, even though there's probably not enough, there was another piece of information that was passed out this morning, a couple of graphs relative to high school achievement and performance, as well as a list of some strategies, activities, programs that are taking place in the school system. I want to personally thank you for being here. The numbers in this session show what we know to be the case, that communities all over America, all over the state, and in particular in our community, are interested in the health, the well-being of our young people, and in particular, their educational preparation. Asheville City Schools is aware of the educational disparities, obviously, which exist between our African-American students and our white students, and the district has been working diligently to eliminate these gaps and these disparities. And I want to refer to them as disparities and not inequities. A school system, all school systems, Asheville City Schools in particular, Our programs are equally accessible. Our programs are of equal quality. Programs are for all students, not any one particular race, so there's not an inequity in the programs, there's a disparity in the achievement among our young people, and that it's a very real disparity, as you've heard, as Dr. Locke's already pointed out. Unfortunately, these and even more dramatic inequities exist, as you've also heard, in every urban public school district around our country, indicating to me that the problem that we're here to talk about, the problems are complicated and they're deep-rooted, and they're going to take some serious ground root fundamental efforts and strategies to resolve. Do understand that as educators we are disappointed in the results to date and stand more committed than ever to closing the achievement gap, reducing the disproportionate number of African American children who are in exceptional education classes, and raising the dismal graduation rate of African American children. However, it is equally unfair to recognize the gains in student achievement to not recognize the gains in student achievement that have been made in all levels in our school system, the progress made to date in closing the gap, and examples of the internal and community efforts underway, all targeted at better serving minority students. And most importantly, what has already been stated, and let me reiterate, the community coming together not only to look at the possible reasons of why these disparities exist, but what we can do to change these disparities and to create a level playing field for all students to receive an education. As indicated in the report, presently there exists an unacceptable 34.3% gap in the achievement on the end-of-course composite scores at grades 9 through 12. However, if we take a snapshot of student performance from 2001 to 2006, we find the following, and this is in the little chart that's been handed out to you. Over the past 5 years, there has been a 13.7% increase, so 13.7% more African American students are proficient on the end-of-course composite scores in Asheville City Schools. This is up from 42.5% to 56.2% from 2001 to 2005. During the same period, the state only posted 5.3% more African American students achieving proficiency. This represents an 8.1% closing the gap since 2001 at the high school level. One must also consider that gains in the percentage of white students proficient has occurred since 2001. Thus, what we have to look at and consider when we look at statistics and data is the fact that even though the gap has closed some, there has been a significant increase in African American achievement on EOC tests at the high school. There's also been an increase of how white students have performed on those same tests. So gains in the number of African American students proficient in Asheville City Schools have outpaced the state and the gains that our Asheville City School white students have achieved. You received a copy of this information, and at your leisure, please take a look at it. Also, as in the report, enrollment disparities in high school classes do exist. However, I want to clarify something there. Courses of study are determined by the state, not by local school districts. Most importantly, it should be noted that the State Board of Education has recently approved a new core curriculum which will collapse 3 of the present 4 high school preparation courses into one: college prep, college tech prep, and career prep courses of study, starting with the incoming class. This year's 7th graders, as they approach high school, they will be under this new curriculum. All the 3 will be collapsed into one. Effective with the graduating class of 2012, all students must complete the new graduation requirements, which will include 2 credits of a second language and a math above Algebra 2. These newest standards will graduate all students meeting the general admission requirements to attend any state university in North Carolina. Will these higher standards increase the state dropout rate, increase the achievement gap? We don't know yet. But one thing is definite: they will require high schools to continue to change and to continue to improve. I want to look at the exceptional children situation for a moment. We tend to look at exceptional children data, which Asheville City Schools has a disproportionate number of minority children in exceptional children's programs, from the standpoint that the children are identified and placed in these programs once they enter school. part of the reality here is that during the 2005-2006 school year, 35 out of the 338 kindergartners, or 10%, came to school already identified as special needs children. This year, 2006-2007, there's already been identified 40 of the next year's kindergartners that will come already identified as special needs children. And this does not take into account the number of children that will be identified after they enter kindergarten or after they enter school. So one thing is for sure, our students are coming to us with greater and greater needs. So this is a challenge, the school system, that will become greater and greater to the school system as the children come. Disparities in faculty and staff employment. Let's look at that a moment from a different statistical standpoint. Nationally, and I know it's already been said that what's occurring nationally and what's occurring on state level, it is what it is, but it's not acceptable to us here locally. And I agree, I concur with that. However, I want you to keep it in a contextual reference point of what the situation is around the country and around the state. Nationally, 90% of the K-12 teachers are white. In Asheville, 88% of our teachers are white. Nationally, 40% of all students are minority. In Asheville, 49% of all of our students are minority, and 35% are African American, while only 6% across the country of African American college students are in education preparation programs to become teachers. Only 6%. And only 2% of African American males go to college to become teachers. The pool of potential minority educators is drying up. Now, why are African Americans choosing not to go into the profession, not to become educators? Some don't see it as a prestigious profession anymore. Some don't feel they're supported once they come to different communities. Low pay, too many negative perceptions about teaching, and many other career options are available to minorities today other than education. So there's a lot of things to consider our young people take into consideration before entering the field. What are we doing about it in Asheville City Schools to recruit more African American teachers? The board has established a minority recruitment committee. Sign-in bonuses have been put into place. Relocation assistance is provided to new teachers. We conduct a tour of Asheville each spring to try to recruit, and we've entered into a bold new initiative with the city of Asheville to address one of the major problems that we face, and that is affordable workforce housing. Due to the cost of housing in our community, a lot of young people just can't afford to live here, to move here. Therefore, we've entered into a collaborative with the city and with an anonymous donor at this point to build affordable workforce housing for city police officers and teachers. More about that later. As previously mentioned, the educators of the Asheville City Schools understand the issues, have accepted the responsibility, and are taking action to improve these in all areas of identified and perceived disparities. Over the past 5 years, the following initiatives have been implemented to improve minority achievement. SILSA, the School of Inquiry and Life Science at Asheville, posted the highest EOC scores of the original 11 redesigned schools. This is the Bill and Melinda Gates schools. It consisted of 52 students last year and 84.6% proficiency. We've put into place, we've increased the number of children in AVID. We've started an FX, a freshman experience program. We're studying the implementation of a high school literacy program. An advisee program is under study, and we've enhanced service learning and work-based learning opportunities. I wanted to talk more about those, but my time has expired. I'll conclude with this. Another handout you received when entering is a listing of all these initiatives underway. There are 9 initiatives at the elementary level to work on the achievement gap, 13 at the secondary level, and 12 are community-based, but much work remains to be done. I would like to conclude by inviting you to join one of the many existing initiatives. Research suggests that even the most severely challenged high-poverty schools can improve student achievement and graduation rates if they layer on overlapping strategies. The challenge now becomes, how do we create the conditions? What do we change? What do we do that will allow all students to succeed? We feel we're on the right road, and this morning, if you've not been invited, we want to invite you to get on board for the trip. Thank you.
Dr. Jenkins Mullen.
Okay, it's fine. Okay, that's fine.
And remember, darling, only 10 minutes.
You know, I'm going to work really hard at this, and in fact, I was going to begin my comments with saying I will try to keep this under 10 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Whiteside, for the public reminder here. The first thing that I need to say, well, I need to welcome you to UNCA to begin. I think you can hear me in the back, is that right? Okay, that's fine. One of the first things that I need to say to you is that I am on the Asheville City School Board. The school board is an appointed position. The city council appoints a school board. In many cities, it is an elective position. You need to understand, though, is that we are public officials and we are responsible to the public. You really need to understand that. We are responsible to you. If it's not going well, you are absolutely free, and in fact, it's your responsibility to contact a member of the school board. The buck does stop here, and I think all of us own that responsibility. And so just let me put that out there to begin. I also need to say to you that I sort of entered this notion, this field of education, activism, if you will, in about 1993. And I bring that up because a number of the issues that Dwight Mullen and I wrote about, and in fact we received a front page place above the fold in a Saturday Citizen Time, thank you, Mr. Smith, though you weren't here, I need to give you some credit, for bringing these statistics to light. And one of the things I remembered being interviewed on was this idea of these problems, these national problems, which Mr. Logan has presented to you, and how the extent to which these are not problems that simply affect Asheville, but that you see these kinds of problems mirrored throughout the country. And we all acknowledge that. And I do remember, though, my response to that question was that there were two things. One is that when we have these problems, most certainly in the community, I think when we get to the housing section for all of the panels, we'll see that the disparity exists all over the place. What we do know, though, is that we are Asheville, North Carolina, and we're operating with a school system population of just under 4,000 students. And that was one of my huge frustrations, and remains one of my huge frustrations with serving in this position, and with my conjecture of this prior to coming on this position. I used to say to some of my friends, my God, 4,000 people, we could all take 3 of them home and make this correct. It's not the same as being, I think, in the South Bronx, where obviously the economic and criminal justice issues and so forth and so on are much more. And so while I accept this notion that we are one in a large pot of localities that have these problems, I do want us to keep in mind, so that we don't get disappointed with these efforts, that we are a relatively small district. And so it gives me some optimism in terms of what efforts we could make here and what success we might be able to have. The other frustration for me is that Asheville City Schools, and mind you, I'm taking heat on this, and I'm putting my brothers in heat too, whether they wanted it or not, but we all take it well, quite frankly. Asheville City Schools is, and has been since I've been in this city, over 20 years, is always consistently been in the top 3 funded school districts in the state. We are funding students, I think, per student expenditure I'm talking about now. I think we're funding students at just under 11,000. We're over 11,000. So that makes us the second, I think, then. We fight with Chapel Hill schools about who's going to spend the most money on the school, who's going to spend the most money. We have a tax supplement, many of you know this, that subsidizes. I didn't mean to bring up any bad feelings right here, though I understand taxes can do that. But we do solicit, let me say, from our citizens, our city citizens, money so we can supplement the education of our students. And again, that has been a source of some frustration, though I can say that I think there has been some money directed wisely. I support a number of the directions of some of these funds since I've been on the school board. So I needed to say that as a source of frustration. I also need to bring up this idea, I resurrect this notion. There were some slides that were being shown on the wall, and it's fine that they aren't right now, but the question here becomes the state of Black Asheville. And so that while we have made some, I think, impressive gains over the past 5 years, and before that, actually, in grades 3 through 8, you'll see some gaps really closing along, within that population. And I think, that credit needs to be, recognized where it's due. We are stuck. We are stuck in these high schools. We are just, this high school. We are simply at a place that is just, it's crazy, it's difficult. And no one on the school board, and some of you come to our work sessions, and which I think are the most telling sessions, no one comes in here without understanding that this is a source of tremendous frustration, anger, I think is fair to say, among the board members. We have the disparity in suspensions. In fact, I just received the latest data. Someone just brought it to me, hot off the press, that I think that our suspension levels, I'm looking over there at Mr. Whitesides, are we talking about tripling or doubling African-American suspension lists? We have some 6 times as much from the previous year. Is that right, Liam? Oh, okay, there we go. All right, so these are not issues that anyone takes lightly at all. You want to make sure, though, let me say, the 3 through 8 improvement is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Understand that. But it also carries a large source of anger for a number of us, and that's because these are many low and reduced income students, particularly, I won't name the schools particularly right now, but we have seen improvement among some of our least economically advantaged schools and students. So of course, then you wonder, and so what happens to them when they get older? If we could do it when they're small, what's stopping us from moving along when they are older? I would suggest, and it's part of an initiative that I'd like to see, though I'm going off of the board soon. I have every confidence that my board colleagues will do this. And that what has to happen in the higher grades has to be an entirely new ballpark. We have seen, We have seen improvement in the AVID program. I speak so highly of the AVID program. I consider myself in some ways, maybe not the mother, but the stepmother of this AVID program. We've doubled the number of students who are in that program. When the students came into that, largely African American, middle average performing and below average performing students who should have been performing at a much higher level. We saw last year 16, the entire graduating class entered university. All right. We know that works. How do we duplicate that? And I'll leave you with that thought, I'll almost leave you with that thought. Remember, we are the school board. If you need to put it to us, when it's time to do this, I just ask that you restrain from any physical violence. But when it's time to ask us the hard questions, that's what it is you need to do. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Mr. Al Whitesides.
Good morning. I think before I put on my school board hat, I must wear my UNCA Board of Trustee hat and welcome you to UNC, the UNCA campus. And it's great to see what the political science department and the students have done. And I want to commend you on the report. And again, welcome everybody again. Here's what you've done. Now I'm going to put on my school board hat. And as most of you know, and you've probably observed me, I'm the impatient member of the school board. I come from a background, first of all, I think it's important to know this. Not only have I lived with the educators for the past, well, we won't even get into that. It's been a long, long time. But my family impressed upon us at a very early age the importance of education. And if it wasn't for my mom and dad, I would have probably been one of the statistics you saw on the board. Not only my mom and dad, but the entire community here in Asheville. You know, I had mom and dad, not only the teachers we had, especially at Stevens Lee, but also my church. I had teachers there who were teaching me in Sunday school and all. And I tell the story that when time came for me to go to college, I had to go because I'd heard it since the time I was 5 years old. I had to go somewhere. But what's frustrating to me today, and especially since I've come on the school board, is are we giving the African American kids the same opportunity that I had? And I think this is an embarrassing situation for the African American community as well as the total community. And I know when you look at the school board, you see the head of our school system is African American. The majority of our school board is African American. But we still have this report. Now, we need, and I agree with what Terry said, we're at the point now we need to look ahead and make some movements. I have been involved in the school system for the last, well, 30-some years. I had two daughters who graduated K through 12, and they went on to undergrad at the University of North Carolina. I have a grandson now that's in the 4th grade, advanced school. So you see, I have not only had a lot at stake, but I still do. And most important of all, I'm like all of you. I'm a concerned citizen, I'm a taxpayer, and I want to make sure that we are getting our money's worth. And it's one thing that I hope was pointed out, and this is where 36 years from being a banker comes in too, folks. When I look at what we are spending per pupil, you can look at the national average. We can talk about what's going on nationally, but school districts nationally would jump over through hoops to have the finances that you have given us. And I think we have an obligation, not only as administrators, principals, teachers and all, to deliver. And most important of all, to deliver to our students. Now, I'll be the first to say what I've seen, I know, while Shirley was working and since I've been on the school board, I don't question, the hard work of our teachers, administrators and all. I don't question that at all. But folks, I do question the trail that we're following. We have got to change what we're doing. We have programs that we've put in place, but at some point in time, we've got to start and turn things around. You see the report, we see the numbers, that's great. But one concern I have now is, it's like any house, if you don't take care of the foundation, it's going to cave in on you. And this is what's happening by us not addressing the problems that we have with African American students. Let's look at Asheville High. I see the same problems today at Asheville High that I saw when my daughters were students at Asheville High. The same thing was going on. We had two schools in one. And mind you, my daughters were good students. They take after their mom, thank goodness. One was president of her class in 1984, the senior class there, and the other. And they graduated from Asheville High with honors. But we had, and I talked to the principals then, I was involved with the schools, and I've always been. I've seen the problems that we're talking about at Asheville High not only continue, but they've gotten us to the point now where we used to talk about Asheville High being in the top 100 in certain areas. Today we say we're in the top 400. Now what that tells me is a chain is only as strong as its length, folks. And if we don't tighten up that weak link, that chain is going to just fall apart. Now we have 4,000, no, less than 4,000, 3,800 students. The money that we spend per pupil, we could put them in a private school. But we don't need that. What we need to do is educate our kids with what we have here. We have got to take our system to the next level. It's no getting around that. We have got to improve what's going on. It's a crying shame when you look at the numbers. And I hope, the administrators, teachers, and all don't take it personal, because I'm talking about me. I'm part of the problem. But for those of you who know me, I'm not going to be satisfied with that. We've got to turn things around. But I'm glad to see you here today, because what we've got to do, we have got to come together as a community and work as a community. We've got to see you've got to be in the schools. And here I'm talking to African American parents. You've got to pay attention to what's going on with your schools. And I don't want to hear this that the schools intimidate you. If they do, give me a call. I haven't met a person alive who intimidates me, and I will go with you. We have got to get over that. When we talk about what's going on in Black Asheville, we got to look in the mirror. When we wake up every morning, when I shave, I know who I am. But I also can cry when I go into schools and see some of our kids. When I see the way they come to school. I mean, it's no excuse, folks. We have got to work, and we've got to work together. And that's the total community. All of us have got to be concerned and not just come out once every 10 years or come together at the Martin Luther King, breakfast. Now, I knew Dr. King. I met him first time on my 18th birthday when I was a student in college. And I knew what he stood for. And I guarantee you he's turning over in his grave today when we see what's going on in the Black community, not only in Asheville, but nationwide. And sure, I didn't get up here. I'm not going to talk about the figures. I'll tell you what's going on. I'm not going to insult your intelligence, because you know what's going on as well as I do. We've seen what's happening. But it's easy to throw stones, folks. But we've got to roll up our sleeves and get in and go to work. And it doesn't mean because you have kids in the school system. No. I don't have kids. Well, I do. I have a grandson. But all of us have got to help, because I see all these young men and women in our school system as all of our kids. We have got to take care of them. And folks, we are losing a treasure. We are letting them go. Because when I look at people like my good friend Theodis Beck, if he was coming through the Asheville City school system today, I question if he would be prepared to be Secretary of the Department of Correction for North Carolina, because it's not happening the way it should. When it's time, and all I'll say is I challenge all of you to get involved. And like I said, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying it's time for us as citizens of Asheville to be honest and deal with the problem and not sweep it under the rug. And it's time for us in the school system to move forward and correct these problems. I don't want to see the charts that we see today 5 or 10 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitesides. I want to say one quick thing about him. As we were talking about this the other night, he said, you promised me you were going to say enough. which was the title of a book he had recommended to me by Juan Williams. It's hot off the press. I've got about 2/3 through it, but it's really an important document that Mr. Whitesides had recommended to me as a book to read in preparation. Our final speaker on the panel before we begin the audience participation is Jean Bell.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. And I wanted to be fair with the time distribution, so thank you for hearing me. I was only kidding. I was my friends over there, but
he's trying to tell us something.
Yeah, right. I share the concerns with everybody, and I think most of you know my concerns and my commitment to trying to make a difference. I've just finished reading the book Enough, and I would highly recommend that you read it. I'm not suggesting that it'll be life-changing, but it is thought-provoking, and I think that was the intent when Mr. Williams wrote the book. My twist is a little different, and I've challenged other groups here to think in terms of an African tribe. And the question they asked, if I've got my friends still in the back, the question that the tribe members asked each other each and every day, and their form of greeting is, how are the children? And the answer is, the children are doing well. We need to think through that as we leave here today. I think the problem is so significant that the only way it's going to change if each and every one of us can ask each other that and answer, yes, the children are doing well. Because of the educational system, and I've said this publicly, the ultimate responsibility of educating our kids is the responsibility of the educational system. The ultimate responsibility of getting our kids prepared to be educated is ours. And we cannot continue to go on the same path we're going. Being involved in the movement and having suffered physical harm and a lot of the other harm in the civil rights movement, we used to hear all the time from the nation that this was a plan by the man to destroy us. I've never believed that. I didn't accept it then. But I do wake up a lot at night wondering if it is a plan by the man to destroy us. The other thing I'm concerned about is that we hear too often, why do we have all these programs? Well, if you look at the number of African-American kids in prison, look at the number of African-American kids that don't graduate, that 7 out of 10 of our African-American females are having children out of wedlock, and 6 out of the 7 are born into poverty. We can't have enough programs to help a group of underserved children or underserved people as it pertains to health care and other care. So I just think that we need to get focused, stay focused, and we do need to ask each other each and every day and all day, how are the children? And if we do that, I think that we can stay more focused, not on programmatic issues, but life issues. I spoke to the JCs not long ago, and I reminded them, if you think that all the brothers that are in the hood, that are standing with their pants down and chasing cars, and Dr. Mumpire and I meet on this frequently, if you think that they're going to all stay in public housing, you're badly mistaken. This problem is growing into a problem that is going to have a deleterious effect on each and every one of us here. If nothing else, if you can gate your community and keep the people out that you don't want there, the cost to have a child in penitentiary versus having a child go to college is 5 times higher to incarcerate them. And the second issue is just morally wrong. We've got ministers here today, and some of them I talk to at least weekly. There is no way that we can, as a society with good conscience, and as my grandson alleged that we're all Christians, can stand by and watch a whole group of people not be educated, be incarcerated, and continue to bring children into this world day in and day out with no plan. You know, I'm not about having some orchestrated deal about having children, and this is the path they ought to take, but there isn't any of us in here that can't admit that it is a gross disservice to bring a child into this world and not have a plan for them to experience some of the success that we have. You just can't do that. This is a cruel society if you aren't middle class. Now, we can sit here and deny that, but it is. If you have to go to Rent-A-Center to get a TV versus going to Circuit City, there's a significant difference in the outcome of that cost. And our system continues the gap continues to widen. We've got more black people in this country that are upper middle class and making over $100,000 a year than ever in the history of America. We've got more black people down here as we have in public housing. The average income is $8,200 a year. $8,200 a year in an environment where the average price of homes is over $160,000. So when you hear all the myths about people in public housing and poor people driving Cadillacs and all these other things, they're all living good, I challenge any of you to come and go with me into some of the areas, and that is not the case. My good friend, Mr. Brown, is here, and I won't call him out, but one of the conversations we had that is tear-jerking is that when we think of our children going to school, not being able to be competitive, one of the big issues is that most of the poor people don't have a desk to write on. When we sat in here today, we can't fathom that, but it's real. And we need to not keep thinking because we're all living well that everybody that's not is dumb, lazy, and doesn't care, because it's not true. The playing field in this society is not even. It's never been even. If you look at the suppression we've had, it's only been 1964 since we were given civil rights. I mean, don't act like that all of a sudden that we all woke up with equal rights and equal opportunities. We did not. You can't expect anybody to start 8 to 10 steps below, go up the building, get to the top, and that they're all going to get there at the same time. It's just physically impossible, it's emotionally impossible, and it's mentally impossible. My last point about this deal in education, it has nothing to do with anybody. It is systemic to a bigger issue. If it were not a significant disparity, the outcome of children in African-American families that had equal education and equal income, their achievement, their SAT and ACT would be the same. 66% of all the African Americans in the United States that have postgraduate degrees have gone to historically black universities. That's more than a coincidence. The achievement of an African American child whose parents makes over $100,000 a year and their parents have postgraduate degrees score the same as white parents who make $50,000 a year and have a high school degree. So there's something in the system that doesn't service us. We know that the SAT, the ACT, that they're culturally biased. We've known that since I was in college. And have we done anything about it? We've talked about it and we said, it's not fair. But what it does, it keeps what I said in the beginning. It keeps us starting off on this uneven playing field, and your struggle has to be greater to get to the same plateau as your counterpart. My closing comment is a comment that one of my colleagues made when I was in the private sector. He said, why is it that all the black women look like they're mad in hell when they come to work? And I said, well, that's not the case. He said, well, when they get here, they just appear to be angry all the time. And I thought about it, and I was on my way home from the train, and this lady, I lived in Cleveland at the time, this lady got on the train, it's 15 below zero, the wind is blowing people into the terminal door, and she got on with 2 kids and a bag, and both the kids is hooping and hollering, and we're all sitting on there in our suits, our briefcases, and these high-powered jobs. And she sits down and she says, shh. And I said, you okay? And she said, hell no. And I said, well, you know, I don't know, you know, and she said, well, I'm just telling you I'm not okay. and I indulged in a conversation with her, and we became good friends, and she became a friend of my family. But here was a case. She was single, her husband was useless, a brother, and there's a lot of those. So let's not deny that. There's an inordinate amount and a disproportionate amount of black men who were totally irresponsible. So she was single, poor. She was working downtown at Higby's, which was a department store, and she had a lady keeping her kids. The last thing is that her lips, because of our difference in our culture and the genetic, was protruding out. There was a natural state of her lips. So I thought about that, and I presented this to my colleague. What we perceive as being angry and what we perceive as people being mad, one is a life situation of trying to struggle and watching people sit on the train and talk about how great their day was. And third, we look different physically. Just because our lips are bigger, we assume that if you're smiling, your lips are what? They're thin. And if you're not, they're protruding. We need to just stop it, folks. You know, we can't assume that somebody's mad just because they don't look like we do, and if we think they're mad, we got to think in terms of what happened to them when they go to work versus the way we go to work. And I'd say that to surmise, when our kids get to school, when low-income kids get to school, their struggle the night before and the morning of is different than the kids who have their parents drop them off in their Beamer. It's just different. Right. So if we know that's different, we have to do something to try to even the playing field. So again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to having the discussion with you.
You see why I think of myself as being very fortunate to have all of this panel included in my array of friends. What we're going to do now is engage in some dialogue, and we can do that in one of two ways. The students who you see standing, and I want to introduce the folks who worked on that project, so Jason, you have to stand up. Lauren Fox, who called me one day and said, "This is what we're doing, and we want to talk with you," and we've been in close contact. Liam just walked out the door. He's the guy in the blue shirt who has the camera, Liam Luttrell Rowland. Jason Toole is the person who's operating the computer over here, and I didn't see Erica. Erica's not here.
But Lauren's in that group. Oh, sorry.
I did her first.
All right. My bad. Okay.
Give me time. Give me time now, Dr.
Missing it.
But these are the four students who were primarily responsible for the collection of the data that you see. And they are available to give you either a microphone if you wish to ask a question, or they have paper and pencils if you want to ask a question and you want me to read it from the podium. So we're ready to have questions, and we hope that at the end of this we'll have the opportunity to present some potential solutions, strategies, and that type of thing to the issues. Okay, first question right there.
Thanks. My name is James Casera. I've taught with Asheville City Schools for about 20-something years now at Claxton Elementary, where I've been for a number of years. And I guess my question is kind of related, directed first at Superintendent Logan, my boss. But it's going to piggyback a little bit something that you just talked about, Mr. Bell. And I really feel that if we're going to truly look at some of the disparities between white and black achievement in Asheville City Schools, I want to know if we've also broken it down in terms of economic achievement, economic disparity. And what I mean by that is how are poor white children, economically poor white children, compared to economically disadvantaged black children? Because I fear that some of our solutions may be too narrow if we don't look at it within a much larger picture. Now, I do understand, of course, that the overlap between economic disparity and race can't be ignored. I wouldn't pretend to do that. But is it truly a disparity in terms of race, or is it more fully a disparity in terms of economics and race? And what are we doing to break down those numbers and to look at solutions based on those numbers, if indeed that is the case, that the disparity is both economic and racial?
I can answer a part of that. If you look at the achievement in Buncombe County, there's a direct correlation between the SATs and ACT scores and the income of the area that the schools are involved in. If you look at Buncombe County, there is a direct correlation. And Robert and I have had lengthy conversations about this, and with Superintendent Dotson. What I will submit to you that the biggest difference between African Americans, low-income African Americans, and low-income white Americans is not, the academics are very close. The achievement of whites is a little higher. The big difference is the disciplinary action among poor black kids is much greater than it is among poor white kids. So that's a disparity that I think gets worse as the kids go on in school. The vulnerability of making a mistake and getting put out of school, if you're an African-American kid, is much greater, if not 5 times higher, than it is if you're poor and white and do the same thing. In closing, I would ask you to look at the history of this country on all the violent crimes that have been committed in our school system, and look at the number of black kids who get put out of school and the number of white kids, and how many mass murders have been committed by white kids, but they rarely get put out of school. That's what I would ask you to look at.
I would also like to piggyback, before we take the next question, and we've been told to be brief, so you won't get a dissertation defense here. Yes, there is a strong, high correlation between the socioeconomic status of a child and the educational performance of that child in school. I concur with everything that Mr. Bell has pointed out. We are looking at, we drill down into the data, and we do look at the performance of various socioeconomic levels. We do compare how students perform gender, ethnicity, and socioeconomics. That is something that is reviewed. And a lot of the programs, a lot of the efforts, a lot of the strategies are targeted for specific groups to try to improve how specific children, specific areas are doing. I would point out, though, that as we deal with African American children, one of the reasons for the higher ratio of out-of-school suspension, in-school suspensions for minority kid versus majority kids centers around the reason for the discipline, the reason for the referral, and what we need help with, what the community needs to assist education with, is working with our young people to help them understand, even though this behavior may be accepted in the home, in the community, in the neighborhood, even though you may have learned this behavior there, in society, in the world, it's not acceptable. And the behaviors vary, they differ. We find more confrontational type behavior. This is Asheville. We keep very detailed data relative to the referrals, why the children are referred to for discipline in the first place. And we find a higher level of more confrontational, dramatic type behavior from minority children than we do majority children, which results in more stern action because of the, you say the drama or the confrontational nature of the behavior. So that's something we need assistance with. How do we help children understand discipline, appropriate behavior, how to conduct themselves in school and in the classroom?
And Mr. White says?
Yeah, I'd like to add mine. It's quick. I think one thing, let's remember, folks, we live in America. And when we talk about disadvantaged white kids, they have one strike against them. But when we talk about disadvantaged African Americans, they have 2 strikes. Let's not forget that. Thanks.
Okay, right here in the second row.
Hello.
I'm taking this.
I'm Joanne McKnight. I know a lot of these folks up here, and even though I like to maintain peace, when I think about our kids in the school, I'm often mad. I think that we cannot forget, and I want us to remember, the effect of popular culture on our children. And I believe that that's part of what we're dealing with here. Now, let me explain very briefly what I mean by that. I have a daughter who went to Asheville High School, and she wasn't there for a week before at least a dozen upper-class boys started calling her. And they all wanted a notch on their bedpost, and eventually one got it, and she ended up getting pregnant. And they were all telling her how fine she is and how wonderful and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And she ended up falling for it. When we start talking, and I want you to think in terms of, and I don't even want to dignify it by calling it music. I want you to think in terms of the negative effect on the spirit of our children of this rap stuff. And you know what they do? They do what we did when we were listening to Motown. They memorize the words. And when they memorize the words, the consciousness falls down inside of them. And forgive me for being passionate. I am passionate about this. And they think that this is the right way to be. So all the little boys want to be pimps. And all the little girls think it's okay if they're treated as whores. Right. You cannot, who is that back there doing that? You cannot talk about educating our children without dealing with the effect of this pop culture on them. And I think it's very important for us to look at that. That's one of the things that we're battling. And I think we're walking up the down staircase. It's so hard to battle because values and mores are important, and our children aren't getting them. They're learning stuff in the street because they value what their peers say more than what the parent says, and they don't.
I get it.
And they don't. You know, they don't get it. Now listen, action steps, and I'm gonna go away. Action steps. When these little 9th grade girls go to Asheville High School, get some of those upperclassmen who have already gotten babies, and you get them to those girls, and you warn those girls through those other girls about what's going on with the boys. Because the reality is all the girls said no, they'd stop.
Thank you.
May I address very quickly?
Thank you.
That just very quickly. I agree with my friend Joanne entirely. And one of the ways we've seen this in the high school, because you're right, this identification with, you know, images that are anything but favorable have an impact, a tremendous impact. We know that the #1 reason that African American girls drop out of school is pregnancy. We know that. And one of the things that happened this past year that was, you know, we were looking at the graduation numbers. I don't even want to talk about those right this minute. They really, really were very, very, well, between 25 and 29% of the African American children graduate. I'm talking about 75% we're losing between 9th and 12th grade. Now, one of the things that I wanted to say is this past year, the number of African American girls who that we lost between 9th and 12th grade was actually higher. We lost more girls than we did boys. Now, what does that mean? So that we're not in a competition for that, but it does speak to this widening of the low achievement gap well into the community of our girls. I just wanted to give a quick response.
Thank you. I had 2 questions, one of which relates to that. It's about the suspension issue. What is the school system doing to keep kids in school rather than suspend them? Superintendent Logan?
And quickly, we have multiple, again, when we talk about programs, I know people say, you got a program for this, you got a program for that, why do you have so many programs? It goes back to what Mr. Bell pointed out. What the research has indicated is that when we're dealing with the extreme complex nature of the problems that we face today in trying to help children, you've got to just layer strategies on top of strategies and overlap assistance so that if one misses, if a child falls through one safety net, there's a possibility of being caught in another. Now, again, what all the money goes for, staff, support, resources, assistance, to try to provide these programs. They're expensive. This is a capitalistic society we live in. No one gives a lot for a lot of these things, even though our community is very good with its volunteerism. What is in the district presently, we even have programs where if a student is suspended from school, if a child receives for less than a 10-day suspension, the child does not necessarily have to be sent home. We have a program called Short-Term Metro, in which the child goes into another setting. They're out only one day. That gives the school an opportunity to prepare the assignments for the child. The child goes into a isolated setting away from the mainstream. They continue to do their work. They're not counted as absence, and they can return to school caught up with their work and not miss the days. So there are various types of programs in place. The district probably doesn't what we call long-term suspension. That's where one is removed for the entirety of the school year. We probably don't long-term suspend 20 children a year, but a lot go into the short-term and in-school suspension programs. In-school is another program that we utilize where for minor infractions, the child will go into in-school rather than out-of-school suspension. And again, the child is not removed from school. They do their work, and they're able to be counted in attendance while they're there.
Okay, I think it may be better if you write your questions, because I see 50 hands up, and I'm not going to get to you. And I think it might be easier because I'm able to summarize some of them. So I'd ask if you try that, and maybe that'll work. For example, this question relates to the suspension issue. And the current statistics for dropouts for ninth graders and the implementation of the FX program, has it really impacted that situation?
In fact, and I didn't get a chance to talk about this because I ran out of time, all of the programs that have been implemented over the course of the last 2 years, SILSA, expansion of AVID, the FX program, the literacy program, we're working on an advisor-advisee program right now. All of those programs are showing improvement and success beyond what we had even anticipated. Now, I won't get into that data at this point because that would just prolong the answer. But the long and the short of it is, yes, the results from the first semester of the FX program has been even beyond our expectation. But we only have a semester of data on FX. FX is freshman experience. It's where we totally isolate the ninth grade class, the incoming group. It's a freshman transition program. It's on the 3rd floor of the high school. All of the first-time ninth graders at the high school are in the program together. Their courses are teamed, except for their elective courses. There's common planning for the teachers. There's more parental opportunity for parental involvement with the teachers, such as report card pickup. We try to have increased interaction, and the suspension rate, thus the disciplinary referrals, the attendance, and the student performance for the first semester has been far, far better than any previous year.
Okay. I have a question right here. Right here?
Okay. Yeah.
I wanted to address the question.
Who are you, please?
I'm sorry, my name is Wayne Purcell. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Dr. Logan, about special needs kids, and you said that the school, they come into the school with special needs. And my concern is, coming in at such a young age, who determines special needs kids? What am I doing? No? Who determines special needs kids, number one? Number two, I know Dr. Mullen mentioned something about a group of 16 or so that graduated and all went on to college. And I'm curious as to if they come in with special needs, do they also go out with these same special needs, or do you have some sort of record or system to show that these special needs kids have met the necessary requirements to move up to par and to graduate on a level that we expect?
I just had this conversation with Mr. Logan a few days ago. What we see is what percentage are we coming in with from the preschool? About 10%.
11% a year. Coming
in at the lower grades and as identified special needs children or exceptional children receive that identification. You see it stay the same. You see it go up slightly. And then, you know, the point is that when you get into the high school again, and you look at the percentage of special needs children, as exceptional children, you see this huge dip in 10th grade. And the reason that you see this huge dip in 10th grade is because they can drop out of school when they turn 16 years old, and which is another issue that has to be addressed. In terms of the AVID students, those students generally are not among the ranks of the exceptional children students. These are students who are earning C's, who should be earning B's and A's, you know, for any number of reasons. Typically, it's not the home, though, I need to say. And so we graduate successfully, full classes. They all go on to college.
Okay. Next microphone right over here.
Excuse me. I'm with Voices of Parents, but the thing is, I want to be real about this whole situation. We've asked the board on numerous occasions. We've been to the board and we've been disrespectful. We've been disrespected, and there's one member that told us that we were pissing them off about a situation that was happening. We've never talked to the superintendent. The thing that my question is, we sitting here talking about black kids as though we're aliens. All of y'all, everybody up there are African Americans, and we know the aggressiveness that we live in. We have to push ourselves through this, push ourselves through that. The best salesmen in the world are dope dealers. It's the wrong thing to do, but they sell more dope than anybody have ever sell cars. So the children are amped to learn. It's just a process that you go through in teaching these children. We wanted to get with the board and the superintendent about alternative teaching to teachers, because there are a lot of prejudiced teachers out there. And so the thing that we wanted to do is upgrade that and you know, help them to understand how black kids live and how black kids grow up.
Okay, thank you very much. Reverend Hardaway?
I'm Reverend Hardaway. I'm with the Interdenominational Ministers Alliance. Dr. Logan, I respect you. I respect your credentials. But as you were talking in your initial talk, it sounded like you were saying black children are more aggressive and more violent than white kids in the beginning of which, as you were talking about, in discipline. And I felt I'm not going to allow you to stereotype our kids, to say our kids are more violent than white kids. Now, I know the young lady here was saying about music. I think white kids listen to hard rock. They listen to a lot of other kind of music that's also, they listen to rap as well. And maybe it's not a statement, maybe it is a statement, but I guess we need to decide and figure out why our children don't admire us, they don't respect us, and they don't want to be like us. They perpetually moon us with the way and their style of their dress. So I guess we need to look at what is it about us that they don't, you know, they don't want to be part of. They don't get. I don't get a sense that they respect us, that they want to be like us. We send them to school, but then they don't want to learn. Then they've got problems at school in which they get suspended. Last year, a student was suspended because their hair was dyed red. They've got to deal with all those issues at school. So again, maybe it's not necessarily a question, but it is a statement. But I don't want you to get away with saying that our kids are more aggressive and more violent than their white counterparts.
Dr. Locke, I'd like to respond.
Okay, and I want to give you a quote from this book, which was interesting to me, that it says that 80% of all hip-hop music customers are white. That was one of the things that was pointed out in this particular book.
Right.
All right, Superintendent.
And one quick clarification. We have this morning, throughout the process of the students preparing the data that you've seen in the report, hung our hats, or a lot of the perceptions and ideas that we're going to leave here today with on the data. This is what the data indicates, Reverend Hardaway.
Numbers can prove anything.
When you look at, well, are you discounting the
Well,
research?
I know that we live in a society. Take ball players. Sometimes ball players, when they're black, they're called aggressive. They're called moody. When they're white ball players, they're called assertive. They're called, they just want their own privacy. So, you know, the language and the wording that we use, to label and to stigmatize blacks, are always in a negative connotation. And I'm not going to let you get away with calling our children more aggressive and more violent.
We don't determine the language that's utilized. The language that, when an infraction occurs of a disciplinary nature at school, there is a predetermined, and it comes from state officials, of different types of misconduct or acts in school. Now where the subjectivity comes into is to the degree of the act. But the act is very clearly spelled out, and what we have to report when those acts occur. The data is simply reflective of what has taken place and what we deal with in school. I'm not saying that there are not aggressive, violent white children that we deal with in school. I'm saying that the numbers that you see reflect what our administrators and teachers confronted with and try to work with on a daily basis, Reverend Harder.
Okay.
I understand.
Thank you, Reverend Holloway.
Perception.
We don't want to get into a debate here as much. I have up here now 24 questions.
Wow.
And we have less than 20 minutes for all these questions, plus the hands in the audience. We're going to listen right over here with the microphone.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Terry Harrell. First, I want to acknowledge the panelists for taking the opportunity or for getting together in this forum to, try to hear us and try to let us have some kind of idea of what you're looking at. I can tell you what I'm looking at from the other side. Evidently, you don't have the answers because you're here. And we don't have the answers because we're here. So it has to come from some kind of consensus or some kind of something different has to happen. In other words, we're going to have to go outside the box.
Right.
Okay. This is something that friends of mine have been talking about 10 years. And, I'm not political. I don't know anything about it. I'm Dr. Whitesides. I respect what you said. I come from a family of people that believe in education.
Well, I know your family well.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of those real educated people. I don't have no numbers and degrees and all of that. But I can tell you this. The difference starts when children are very young. If you take a 2-year-old black child, a 2-year-old white child, and put them right there with some toys, they're going to play. They're going to play and they're going to get along just fine. You take those same kids when they're 6, they're going to fight. It doesn't start with the children, it starts with their parents.
So
if
true.
you look at African culture, elders are respected. If you look at American culture, elders are respected in a different way. The elders run the show. Okay, all of the elders are white, so they run the show. Now, I'm not saying that integration doesn't work. I'm not saying that integration in itself isn't a great and wonderful concept and idea. But the fact of the matter is, a white teacher cannot teach a black child how to be white any more than a black teacher can teach a white child how to be black. Now, we have a wonderful education system set up. We have what you call magnet schools and different specialized schools that parents are allowed to choose where their children go. As an outside-the-box suggestion, may I suggest that you, as what the boys consider the talented 10th, get together, write some grants, talk to some people, and set up a school in this system that has black teachers for the black kids. And I'm not saying that they need to be separated or separatists, but I'm just saying that these kids need to be reached younger, and they need to be reached by people that know how to reach them. Grandmamas and grandmamas have always been our best educators because they have time because the parents are trying to work or whatever. Well, this generation don't have it like that. You know what I'm saying? Grandmama's still in the street trying to get her rent paid. So we need...
Can you move along so that we got a lot of people behind you who also wanted to speak?
We need, I would ask that you would look at as one of the ideas of setting up a magnet school in the system that has black teachers, at least to the middle school level, to reach these kids that are being dropped.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In an effort to intervene as early as possible in the preparedness of the child to come to school ready, the federal government, and then facilitated by the state government, has mandated that all school systems identify young people and through a program or a process called Child Find, in which, and this isn't just in Asheville, this just isn't in North Carolina, it is an effort, an initiative to try to identify children who are developmentally delayed, who have not had an opportunity to learn basic school readiness skills such as colors, shapes, designs, patterns, alphabet, etc., to help those children catch up and be ready, and as well as to put school systems on standby to receive and work with the children when they come in, knowing that they have special needs. The children are identified as early as, Mr. Parada, 3 years of age, through a child find process where officials go out into preschool centers, establish preschool daycare centers to identify and give the children a small battery of assessments to determine exactly if they are progressing and where they should be at that developmental readiness stage. Now, there's a lot of children who are missed because they aren't in some type of organized preschool setting. Okay. And we don't get a chance to see and work with those children until they arrive in kindergarten.
Okay, microphone right here.
Yes, my name is Shirley Moog. I'm Community Outreach Chair for the NAACP. I've lived in this community for 30 years and been active in anti-racism for 20. I would like to strongly suggest, because I have seen this over all these years, it's been in the newspapers years ago, I would like to strongly suggest that what happens to black children in the schools is that they are not giving the chance, the care. They are taught by teachers who come with their own set of prejudices, and the faith that you will immediately put into a white student is not put into these black students. The black students get the message. The other children in the class, whether it's elementary school or high school, get the message, and that's where the work has to be done. People need things like people who are already in the system need building bridges to begin to work on what they may not even realize exists in them, and new teachers should be carefully screened for where they are. I have been in Irwin High, I've been in Hall Fletcher, I've been in Asheville High School, and I'm trying to think of one other school that I have tutored in. And I've also tutored adult students. And they all come with this baggage. And let me tell you, that kind of prejudice doesn't come from their own homes. And this is always swept under the rug, but it is definitely the elephant in the room.
Thank you. And I think earlier, let me just say, earlier I did make a statement. I think we have to be more honest in agreeing that the playing field is not level. People don't come into the school system on an equal playing field. I don't know of anything else in America, and this is not a criticism, but it's a habit. I don't know of anything in America that's still similar to the way it was 40 years ago. We open the same time. I've talked to the superintendent about this. I've talked to the people in the state. We have more working people, more working women than ever in the history of this society, and we're still pouring kids out every afternoon at 3:30. The highest pregnancy rate in America comes in that same time period. We just have to do something different. But the bigger issue is, are we willing to do it, or are we just going to, after this, kind of let it go? And that's why I wanted to say earlier, you know, we need to ask the question, how are the children? And the children are doing well, but we need to make sure they're doing well by not doing the same thing that we've been doing since I started school in 1953. You can't do that. You can't let all these kids out of school in the afternoon. So we have these facilities that are open, and there's nobody in them, so we're busing kids to other facilities to after-school care when they just left the place that would accommodate them. But who wants to talk about it, and we just don't talk about it, and I don't understand
I'm
that.
sorry, Dr. Locke, I really do have to say a thing about this. You started school in 1953. I didn't even know that. Let me say this.
I was one.
There's a very, very
precocious.
quick comment that I wanted to make, and it's one that comes up over and over again. It surfaces particularly when we look at technology and the access that students have to technology and the access that students do not have to technology. You try to teach children, you know, the fine points or even the major points of technological, you know, something or other. And a part of this thing, I think Ms. Moog made this point well, as some others, is that we are not on a level playing field economically as well as racially. When you look at the gap between black and white people, you certainly can see that. So we have to be a lot more intentional about what it is we ask students to do in terms of, you know, I mean, my son came home with a computer assignment. He raised his hand and said, I don't have access to a computer at my house. He was simply ignored in that way. My teacher thought he was lying, but the point of the matter is that that is one of the examples of those things that has to be addressed up front and head on. If they don't have it, we got to figure out how to make it available, or at least not penalize people because they come from, you know, disadvantage. So I had to say.
You know,
Okay.
can I have one comment?
Yeah, quickly.
Okay. What I would like to say, and especially Mr. Harrell, when he said out of the box and the comment the lady just addressed, one of the frustrations with me with public education in America is we don't change. We talk about how they're doing bad all over the country, and we use that as an excuse. I come from the business world, folks. If we see one bank that's failing, we don't say we're going to fail with them. We profit from their mistakes. We've been making the mistakes in education for the last 40 years. When in the hell are we going to turn things around?
Okay. Let me just, you mentioned out of the box, somebody's microphone is beating. The out of the box program at Asheville High School. Isaac Coleman, would you just address that briefly?
My name is Isaac Coleman. I work for the Asheville Housing Authority. I'm the assistant manager at Pisgah View Apartments. Yay. I also, we have just recently formed a collaboration with the Asheville Housing Authority, that is, a collaboration with Asheville High School, and we formed a committee called Outside the Box Committee. And you know, so many things inside the box have been tried to keep low-achieving kids, African-American kids in school. We decided that we would try some outside-the-box things. We invite anybody in this room who wants to join us. We meet once a month. We've been moving the meetings around in the community. If you're interested in joining Outside the Box, then let me know. You can see me after this. We have three projects that we are engaged in, and I don't have time to tell you about all of them, but they're going to be real dramatic, and they're going to make a difference. Thank you.
And what I've decided to do with the questions, and I just spoke with one of the students, is that if you did not sign up when you came in on the paper so we'd have your name, if you'd make sure you do that at the registration desk, we will add all of the questions and written comments to that report, and they will be available at that time of distribution. We simply can't get to all of them. I've still got about 20 up here, and I saw about 25 hands. So we'll go right here next.
Hello? Okay. My name is Reverend Valeria Watson-Deust, and I'm one of the solutions. I'm outside the box. I've never been inside the box. I've lived here for a year and a half. I've worked in Hollywood for 20 years. I have a nonprofit. It's called Zamani Refuge African Cultural Center. I'm a resource. I've done Black History Months. And it's been just really difficult to figure out how to either fit in this system. I worked with the program, the Cultural Renaissance, which was supposed to go into Goombay, and there was so much dysfunction there that they weren't even ready for an artist in residence in that program.
Excuse me? The Goombay was not ready?
The Cultural Renaissance program was not ready for me and other artists who were supposed to be working in that program. I'm connected with a lot of African-American artists in this city who, we live here, the kids know us, they see us, and we want to do something because we care about it. You know, for instance, my husband and myself are retired. So I run my nonprofit. That's what I do. We put our money into teaching, educating. We had a proposal into Parks and Rec that was...
you have a question?
Well, my question is, how can we shift this into solutions? I am part of a solution. All I've heard is problems. So to me, I'm a resource. What this man was talking about, an African cultural center, a cultural center, where are the people that can stand with me and be part of solutions? I'm not here to criticize. I'm saying the answers are here.
Okay.
We are part of the answers.
Make sure you get that in writing because we can add that to our report. And then I'm going to go to this side.
My name is Dorothea Goodman Williams. I'm a native of Asheville, and not coincidentally, I'm the first African American to ever have been selected to the North Carolina Governor's School, and at Asheville High. Not a lot of people know that because it's been such a long time, and there are not a lot since me. But one of the things that I've noted, we talked about our kids who are overly aggressive. I've also been a high school teacher. I think that was my first job when I got my first degree out of college. For kids who were said that they could not be controlled, and virtually every one of them that came from Asheville High, I managed to help them get their diploma. A lot of one-on-one, but also my question has to do with parents. I don't hear or see most of the parents that need to be here. It seems that they've been forgotten. And I also want to talk about the lack of hope. I have a lot of young people who come to me who say, who is standing up for us? A lot of people who stand up like me, and I'm saying this, I'm a very blunt person, a lot of you know me. I'm not ignorant. I am supposedly educated, but sometimes I say things in some very risque ways. Let me also say there are a lot of people, young black people, who say, you people, us, older people, are afraid that if we stand up, that things will be taken away. So who will stand with me and stand for young people? I'm wondering who will do that. I don't have anything to lose, you see, because I don't have anything anyway. Who will stand with us? And I want to know from this esteemed panel, why aren't more of these poor parents engaged? Not children. I see people talk about our children need mentors, but how do you hop over a parent to go to their children? Right. I don't like it, and I wouldn't have it. So I want to know that. And I want to know if you're doing that, I want to know what programs you have. And then if you have some, I want to know why they're not effective. Okay. Thank you.
Dee, thank you for your comments. I don't want to respond to the second part right this minute about why the poor parents aren't here, though I would agree that absolutely, positively needs to take place. I know that some efforts were made, though, for this program to get poor parents here, and we had shuttles that were set up in the various housing communities to see that happen, and I'm just not sure that it turned out the way it did, including child care that's available for folk right now. I do want to say very quickly, though, and get sort of a response. I mean, you can raise your hand or make a note if you do comments afterward. It seems to me that the one thing that's missing at this conference, particularly in the education, this panel, is young people. I mean, there are people, it seems, you know, I mean, there are students who are in the school. They could tell us straight up about how their, you know, academic experiences are going. You know, if they're referrals, what the suspensions are like. I mean, all of those things. It seems, you know, why pants sag or not. If that if that relates to pregnancy, all of those conversations I think we need to have with an intentional inclusion of this population that we're talking so much about. So we need to consider that, I think, when we meet again, probably in our family meeting where, you know, we kind of get together and say, okay, folks, what is it that we are going to do for ourselves?
I would also add there were 3 questions about why we didn't have a youth on the panel that had come up in the written form. Okay. Elder Hayes.
My name is John Hayes, president of the Asheville branch NAACP, and I'm here on behalf of, and I see quite a few of them who came through the enrichment program. And someone asked a question a few minutes ago, and it really, we need to stop misquoting the African proverb. It takes the whole village to raise a child. It doesn't take a village. It says, the African proverb says it takes the whole village to raise a child. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. It is a culture thing. It is an identity to say from a child age 3 up who you are and what you can be. A program that received the highest acclaim in the state of North Carolina twice, the Governor's Award, a program that has sent many, 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 many hundreds of young people on to college and did well, even made All-American, and still at major colleges did well. But it is a shame in this community as we sit here, members of council who are here now, cut the budget. I can't get nobody to let the program have a berth or a place in the school. Rent is so high, you can't rent a building because you're a nonprofit. So when do we stop talking the noise and say to the enrichment program, come on? Because I take a child age 3 because I am a preschooler, head teacher, Head Start. And I do tell you, I can get the parents involved because parents are the prime educators of their children. I'm tired of begging the Asheville City School System to tell the principals of school to let the enrichment program use a few rooms because we'll bring our own equipment, we'll bring our own budget because the Secretary of Corrections sitting right over there, he's on the crime commission, they'll make sure I get the money to run the program. I didn't ask you for no money, I just need space so our children can continue to be all they can be. God bless you. No question, just a comment.
Thank you, Elder Hayes. Right here.
Hi, my name is Jerry Jackson. I'm an administrator at Asheville High School. Good afternoon. This is the largest group of people I've ever seen coming to a meeting, and I'm glad that we are all here for one reason, and that is to educate our children. What I would like to also see, and it's already been said before, we have a lot of issues. We have a lot of problems. I come from many different places in the United States, from New York to Mobile, Alabama, and now to North Carolina. It is not the first time I have heard these things. What I do want to hear is all the people that are sitting in here today, don't stop coming. We get to a meeting and we see these things where people want to say and announce what they feel and what they want to do, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, these people stop coming. Don't stop coming. Let's go ahead and do our PTA. Our PTAs are very light in a lot of people. We need to start promoting what we're going to do and keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you. Right here.
Yeah, hello. You guys hear me okay? My name's Sonny Pitts. I'm serving a year with Children First in AmeriCorps. In the morning, I'm a volunteer coordinator at Hall Fletcher. In the afternoon, I walk through the Piscaview apartment housing to a homework club that keeps the kids out of the streets and doing their homework from 3 to 6. I want to know how many of you have kids in Asheville schools, county schools, anybody? Grandkids, cousins, nephews, aunts? All right. I'm volunteer coordinator. We got 60, 70 some odd volunteers in Hall Fletcher. Most of them are white. Most of them don't have kids there. We try to get parents involved. We send letters home to 300 kids. We get one parent. I'm in the apartment complex itself with these kids. We send letters home asking for parents to come down and volunteer. You don't have, I mean, yeah, we got fractions, we got median range and mode in the math. We don't know. We got a GED book, we're looking it up so we can help the kids. We don't expect you to be brilliant. We expect you to be there. And here's what I'm finding, that no matter how hard we work and how many letters we send out, the parents don't come. They're busy. Well, so are these white people. They're busy too, but they're out there mentoring your kids, teaching your kids, and what your kids are hearing is education is important. Well, what are your kids hearing? Education is important to white people because they're the ones in the schools. What I hear from the kids is, I don't see anyone like me saying education is important. I see my mom and my grandma and my aunt, and what they tell me is, yeah, you need to go to school, but what they're hearing is, go to school, get an education, and work your butt off all your dang life for $5.25 an hour. They go outside, and they see Bobo the pimp, who says, I dropped out in 8th grade, I'm making 6 figures a month.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that.
And Bobo the pimp, the low-income people, I think I need to step up and say a word in defense of low-income people, right? I mean, I really do. We're talking about going outside of the box here. Often it's not just about income. We're talking about mass depression, all kinds of situations. When we get these kids through the Asheville High School, 16 children got out of high school and went to college. that is a blessing. Because if they just come out of high school, I don't know what jobs we would have for them in this here Asheville, in this Asheville-Buncombe community. We need to step up on that question as well. Because if I were them and I were spending all this time pulling up my pants and not listening to rap music and whatever it takes to do, and I still could not get a job, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just not sure.
One of the reasons they asked me to be the moderator was they said, can you stop this and not feel bad when people are mad with you because they didn't get their question in? And I said, yeah, I can even deal with Eleanor Earl, one of my good friends, being mad with me. But we do have to stop this. And let me just say that the evidence that I have seen of your enthusiasm, your interest, and your passion around this issue says to me that this is not the end of this dialogue. Some of you didn't get to say exactly what you wish to say in this context today, and I regret that because we had more speeches than we had questions, and that's okay. Let me just say to you that I'd like to thank the panel for giving that time. Could we do that, please? We have a hot buffet lunch that is being served downstairs in the main hallway outside Alumni Hall, which is in the rear of the building. Please walk down or take the elevator, serve yourself, and there's seating in Alumni Hall or any place throughout the building, including the overflow area. After your lunch, you may leave your plates, and someone will come and pick those up for you wherever you're seated. After lunch, in this room will be law enforcement, and downstairs in the grotto will be the panel on housing. Thank you very much.